The ruins of Novaterra lay in silence. The once grand city, now nothing more than a broken carcass of twisted steel and shattered glass, was a testament to humanity's last stand against the Vorkin. Captain Aria Solis stood amidst the wreckage, her gaze piercing through the smoke-filled horizon, searching for any sign of life. She was the last of her command, her crew lost in the final wave of the alien assault. The city, once the pride of humanity, now lay in ruin, a graveyard for those who had fought so hard to protect it. But she wasn't done. Not yet. Behind her, a small group of survivors, soldiers, engineers, and civilians alike, moved with purpose, gathering what little they could from the wreckage. They were the remnants of humanity's once proud military, now reduced to scavengers in their own home. Aria's hand tightened around the hilt of her blade, a symbol of leadership that she had inherited from her father, a decorated war hero who had fought in the early days of the Vorkin invasion. "We're not finished," Aria muttered to herself, the words barely escaping her lips. Her team, huddled around a ruined data terminal, was the last hope for Earth's survival. They had discovered something that could change the course of the war. Deep within the city's core, hidden in a sealed vault, was an artifact that no one had seen in centuries, the Blood Oath. The artifact, a relic from Earth's ancient past, was said to be a symbol of humanity's unbreakable resolve. It had been forged during the early days of space exploration when Earth first encountered extraterrestrial life, a time when humanity was united by the common cause of survival. It was said that the oath would bind all humans to a singular purpose, to never surrender. As Aria approached the vault, her mind raced. Could the Blood Oath still hold the power it once did? Could it truly inspire humanity to rise again? The survivors had no other choice. The Vorkin had decimated their homeworld, and their fleet now loomed in orbit, ready to finish the job. Earth was on the verge of extinction, but there was something different about the way Aria felt. The oath had always been a myth, a story passed down through the generations, never fully believed. But now, standing at the threshold of the vault, she felt its weight. The blood of her fallen comrades, the countless sacrifices, all of it seemed to pulse within the walls of the ancient chamber. "We find this, and we fight," Aria said firmly, turning to her team. "We honor them. All of them. The ones who gave their lives, the ones who never had the chance to fight. We are the last of humanity, and we will never bend." With a determined nod, her team gathered around, setting to work on unlocking the vault. The remnants of Earth's legacy lay within, and the Blood Oath was about to be reborn, not as a symbol, but as a rallying cry. A weapon against the aliens who sought to destroy them. The doors of the vault groaned open, revealing the long-forgotten relic. And as the light from their torches illuminated its surface, Aria knew that the war was far from over. The oath had been awakened, and so had humanity's will to fight. The artifact gleamed in the dim light, its surface etched with ancient symbols that pulsed with a soft, eerie glow. It was an unassuming object, about the size of a human hand, crafted for a material unknown to modern science. The Blood Oath was no ordinary relic. It was a beacon of humanity's defiance, an ancient promise that had bound generations to a single sacred cause, survival at any cost. Aria's fingers brushed across its surface, sending a chill through her spine. The moment her skin made contact with the oath, a surge of memories, both distant and immediate, rushed through her mind. The faces of the fallen flashed before her eyes, her father, the men and women who had fought beside her in the early days of the war, their faces now buried beneath the rubble of Novaterra. Each one had given their life for the same cause. Now she was their voice. She was the last. "Is this it?" Sergeant Lyle asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "The Blood Oath, it doesn't look like much." Aria nodded but said nothing. She felt the weight of their history pressing on her, a silent acknowledgement that humanity had long been on the verge of extinction, but still had not given in. Time to find out. Arya said quietly, stepping back. She motioned for the team to follow her as she carefully cradled the blood oath in her hands. We need to move. This place isn't safe. The team left the vault quickly, making their way through the crumbling city streets. The sound of distant Vorkan warships reverberated in the sky, a constant reminder of the destruction looming overhead. The Vorkan had already razed entire continents. They were waiting for humanity to die quietly, but the survivors weren't ready to go without a fight. Arya's mind was racing. The blood oath was more than just a symbol. It had been created by the first humans to face the stars, forged in the fire of conflict with extraterrestrial invaders. She had read about it in old war texts, but to hold it now, to feel its ancient power hum against her skin, it was as if the past had reached out and grasped her. The weight of the oath was a promise, not just from the past, but a bond that stretched into the future. As the team moved through the wreckage, Arya made a decision. "We're going to Mars," she said, her voice firm. "There's an old military base there, untouched by the Vorkan. If we can get there, we might find more answers about the oath, and we'll need all the help we can get." "I've heard rumors," whispered Lieutenant Kara, her voice tight with fear, "about Mars. That there's a colony of humans still there. But that's been years, decades." "Then it's time we found out if those rumors are true," Arya replied, determination burning in her eyes. "Mars may be the last place we can regroup. It might be our last hope." The team set their course, boarding a scrappy, heavily damaged transport ship that had survived the Vorkan's relentless bombing runs. As they made their way into the cold, black expanse of space, Arya felt a strange calm wash over her. There was no going back now. They had uncovered the blood oath, and with it, they had uncovered humanity's final chance at survival. But time was running out. The Vorkan fleet loomed ever closer, and the survivors needed more than just hope. They needed the strength of generations before them, the power of unity, and the belief that humanity, no matter how broken, could rise again. The fight for Earth was far from over. It was just beginning. The journey to Mars was anything but smooth. The battered transport ship groaned under the stress of its hasty repairs, and the crew moved in uneasy silence, each member lost in their thoughts. The void of space outside the ship seemed infinite, an unrelenting reminder of how far humanity had fallen. Arya paced the narrow corridors, the blood oath still securely held in her hand. She could feel its weight, both a burden and a responsibility. It was no longer just an ancient artifact, it was a promise, and the survivors had placed their hopes on it. Kara, the youngest member of the team, was the first to speak as they neared Mars' orbit. Her voice trembled with a mixture of anxiety and determination. "Captain, do you think they'll be there? The people on Mars, I mean. If there's even one living soul left, they could help us. But what if we're too late?" Arya paused, her eyes lingering on the distant red glow of Mars. "We can't afford to be late. The Vorkan are already closing in on Earth. If there's any hope, it's there." "Hope?" muttered Sergeant Lyle, his tone grim. "Hope isn't going to save us. What's going to save us is the oath, and the will to keep fighting." The word stung, but Arya knew Lyle was right. Hope alone wasn't enough. It had never been enough. Humanity had fought and bled for centuries, yet here they were, struggling to hold onto a world on the brink of extinction. The blood oath had to mean more than just defiance. It had to be the rallying cry that united them in their final push. As the ship entered Mars' atmosphere, the crew's anticipation grew. They had no way of knowing whether Mars was a haven or a tomb, whether the rumored colony was a myth or a sanctuary. All they could do was move forward, driven by the singular purpose of survival. Landing on the planet's surface was a disorienting experience. The reddish dust swirled around the ship, and the barren landscape stretched endlessly before them, desolate and unforgiving. Arya stepped out first, skating the horizon with her rifle raised. The air was thin, but breathable. At least they wouldn't die from suffocation. The rest of the team followed, their boots crunching on the dry ground as they moved toward the coordinates that had been transmitted to them from Earth's last surviving communication station. The base was supposed to be somewhere in the planet's northern hemisphere, hidden deep within the mountains. After hours of trekking through the desolate terrain, they finally reached the base. It was ancient, its outer walls weathered by time, but it was still standing. A flicker of something, a spark of life, thrummed in Aria's chest. This place had endured, just like them. When they entered the base, the silence was deafening. The faint hum of the power generators and the whir of forgotten machines filled the air, but there was no sign of movement. No welcoming party, just the sterile chill of abandoned walls. "We're not alone," Kara whispered, her voice barely audible. Aria's pulse quickened. "I don't like this. Spread out. Find anything that could tell us what happened here." As the survivors searched the rooms, they uncovered signs of life, though it was clear that those who had once inhabited the base were long gone. Supplies had been raided and personal belongings scattered. Then, in a command center, they found a single intact data pad, its screen glowing faintly. On it was a message from the last commander of the Mars colony, dated just weeks before the Vorkan invasion. "They knew we were coming," Aria muttered as she read the message aloud. "They prepared for this moment, just like we did." The message was simple, but powerful. "We have kept the oath. May humanity rise again." With that, Aria knew the blood oath was not just a relic, it was a living testament to the resilience of humanity spread across the stars. But there was more to do. The fight was not over, and the survivors of Mars were only the beginning. The oath had awakened something deeper than just memories. It had awakened the will to fight, and now it was time for humanity to rise once more. The Martian base had offered little solace. There were no survivors, no hidden fighters, and no immediate answers. But what Aria found there wasn't entirely fruitless. The message from the last commander, the inscription of the oath, had reignited something within her, a flicker of hope in the face of overwhelming darkness. It reminded her that humanity was not alone in its struggle. The oath, passed down from generation to generation, had survived across the stars. It had bound countless souls to a singular purpose, to never give in. But now, back on their transport ship, that unity was beginning to crack. Aria stood at the helm of the ship, looking out into the void of space. Her hands gripped the railing tightly, as if the very weight of her command could pull her from the abyss. Behind her, the rest of the team was gathered, discussing their next move. The Vorkan fleet was still circling Earth, and time was running out. The Blood Oath had not yet revealed all of its secrets, and they were desperate for more answers. Then it happened. A familiar voice came through the ship's comms, one Aria thought she could trust above all others, Commander Thorn. His calm, steady presence had been a source of strength during their journey, but now something was off. "Captain," Thorn's voice crackled over the comms. "I need to speak with you privately. It's urgent." Aria exchanged a glance with Kara, who immediately tensed. "What's this about?" Kara asked, her voice edged with suspicion. "I don't know, but we'll find out." Aria's tone was firm, though a knot had already begun to form in her stomach. There was a sense of unease she couldn't shake. Thorn had been with them from the beginning, but the sudden request for secrecy didn't sit right. In the command room, Aria faced Thorn, who stood with his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "What's going on, Thorn?" she asked, her voice measured. "I've made a decision," Thorn said quietly, his gaze not meeting hers. "I've been in contact with the Vorkan. We've discussed terms. Surrender is the only way we can save what's left of humanity." The words hit Aria like a physical blow. She stepped back, her mind racing. "You've done what?" She spat, her voice rising in disbelief. "You've been negotiating with the Vorkan behind our backs." "I did what I had to do, Aria," Thorn replied coldly. "The oath, it's a symbol, a myth. What we need now is a real solution. We can't win this war. Earth is lost. But if we surrender, if we offer our cooperation, we can save the remnants of humanity and rebuild. By bowing to the very beings who've destroyed us, Arya's voice trembled with fury. You're betraying everything we fought for, everything we stand for. You think they'll honor any peace treaty. The Vorkin don't care about us. They never have. Thorne's eyes finally met hers, filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. I never wanted this, but we have to be pragmatic. Look at what's left of Earth. Look at our forces. If we keep fighting, we'll all die. At least this way, we have a chance. Arya clenched her fists. A chance? She repeated, her voice low and dangerous. What do you think the oath means, Thorne? It's not a plea for mercy. It's a vow to fight until the very end. It's the spirit of humanity, our bloodline, and I will not let you throw that away. For a long moment, Thorne was silent, his eyes flicking toward the exit, as if calculating his next move. Then, finally, he spoke again, his voice softer. I'm not your enemy, Arya, but I can't stay with you if you keep fighting a war you can't win. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Arya's heart pounded in her chest. She had trusted Thorne with their lives, and now everything she believed in was in question. It was a betrayal, but it was also a choice, his choice. I won't let you destroy everything we've built, Arya said, her voice resolute. If you want to walk away, then do it, but don't expect to return. Thorne's face hardened, but he said nothing more. He turned and left the room, the weight of his decision evident in every step. As the door slid shut behind him, Arya's breath came in short bursts. The betrayal stung, but it only fueled the fire burning in her chest. Humanity would not bend. Not now, not ever. They had sworn the blood oath, and they would fight until their last breath. The war was about to take a darker turn, but Arya would not let them lose. Not while she still drew breath. The ship's engines hummed softly as Arya stood alone in the command center, her fingers trembling over the console. Commander Thorne's betrayal lingered in her mind, gnawing at her like a persistent wound that refused to heal. His departure was a crushing blow, not just to their efforts, but to the very core of her belief in humanity's unity. How could he, of all people, turn his back on the oath? How could he believe surrender was the answer? But there was no time to dwell on Thorne's defection. The Vorkin fleet was still out there, and every moment they wasted now could mean the end of humanity. Captain, Kara's voice crackled over the comms, breaking through the silence. We've analyzed the data pad for Mars. It's more than just a message. There's a map embedded in it, coordinates for an old weapons cache. If we can get there, we might be able to turn the tide. Arya's heart skipped. This could be what they needed. Send me the coordinates. We're going there now. The crew had rallied together after Thorne's departure, though the air was thick with tension. Some questioned whether they should continue, given the losses they'd suffered, both on the battlefield and within their ranks. But Arya had given them a new direction, a new purpose. The Blood Oath was their guiding light, and it had always been about more than survival. It was about the will to keep fighting, to stand for something greater than themselves. The weapons cache was located on the outskirts of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, a frigid and desolate world far from the Vorkin's watchful gaze. They would have to navigate through dangerous territory, but it was their best chance to find the power they needed to mount a proper defense. As the transport ship made its way toward Europa, Arya stood before the console, staring at the map Thorne had left behind. The faint glow of the Blood Oath on her desk caught her eye, and for a brief moment, it seemed to hum in unison with the ship's engines. She couldn't explain it, but she knew the oath was more than a symbol. It was an energy, a force, driving them forward. We're not alone, Arya whispered to herself, echoing the words Thorne had once said to her, but now with a different meaning. Humanity was never truly alone as long as it held the oath, as long as it remembered the sacrifices made, the promises sworn. Kara entered the room, her face set in a mask of determination. Captain, we've reached Europa's orbit. There's a storm in the area where the cache is located. We'll have to go in low and slow. It'll be a bumpy ride. Arya nodded. No choice now. Prepare for descent. The ship descended into Europa's icy atmosphere, the exterior shaking as they cut through the violent storms that battered the surface. The once pristine moon now seemed a hostile wilderness, its surface covered in layers of frozen ice and snow. The harsh winds screeched against the hull of the ship, but Arya's resolve only hardened. They would get to that cache. The landing was rough, but they managed to touch down just beyond the edge of the storm. The landscape was eerily silent, with vast stretches of ice stretching in every direction. The weapons cache was hidden beneath the surface, in a network of tunnels that had been constructed long before the Vorkin ever set foot on Earth. As Arya and her team made their way through the tunnels, the weight of what they were doing pressed down on her. Each step felt like a step into history, a step closer to the war that would either end in humanity's extinction or its ultimate triumph. The Oath had been a beacon, but now it was time for them to take that light and transform it into something tangible, something that would show the Vorkin they were not as easy to crush as they believed. The team reached the vault where the weapons cache was stored, a heavy steel door covered in ancient runes. Kara stepped forward, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I'll need a few minutes," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. Arya stood watch, her mind whirling. The Oath had awakened something inside of her, something more than just a commitment to fight. It had ignited a fire, a passion that could not be extinguished. She was no longer just leading a group of survivors. She was carrying the weight of humanity's future, and she would carry it until the very end. The doors to the vault hissed open, revealing the cache's contents. Weapons of unimaginable power, long hidden away, now lay at their fingertips. The final piece of humanity's fight for survival had arrived. The vault doors opened with a hiss, revealing rows of advanced weaponry, sleek, powerful devices that hummed with dormant energy. Arya's heart raced as she took in the sight of humanity's last-ditch effort, buried beneath layers of ice and time, waiting for the moment when the world would need them most. Weapons like these were not just tools of war. They were the last hope of a civilization teetering on the brink of destruction. Kara moved quickly, inspecting the contents of the cache. These are more than just weapons. They're advanced energy projectors, capable of taking down a Vorkin warship in one hit. We could use these to turn the tide, but we'll need to power them up and calibrate them. It's going to take time. Arya's gaze remained fixed on the array of weapons. Time. They didn't have time. Every second they spent here, every minute that passed, brought the Vorkin fleet closer to Earth. The blood of the fallen weighed heavily on her, and she couldn't allow their sacrifices to be in vain. Not now. "We don't have the luxury of time," Arya said, her voice cold but resolute. "Get them powered up, Kara. Do what you need to do, but make it quick." Kara nodded, her expression tense as she moved to a central control panel. The others fanned out around the vault, checking the weapons and preparing to move out as soon as they were ready. Despite the urgency, a feeling of unity settled over Arya. This was their chance, humanity's last shot at survival. They would take it, or they would die trying. As the team worked, Arya stared out into the frozen landscape of Europa. The storm had died down, leaving the surface bathed in an eerie glow from the distant sun. The silence of the moon seemed to mock their desperation, a haunting reminder that they were far from home, far from the world they had fought so hard to protect. The weight of that thought almost crushed her, but the oath, the ancient promise passed down through the generations, kept her standing. "Captain," Kara called, her voice filled with urgency. "I've powered up the projectors, but we need to test them. The calibration is off by a few degrees, and if we don't get it right, we could damage the weapons, or worse, miss our target." Arya turned, her heart pounding in her chest. "Do what you have to do. I want these weapons ready in 10 minutes, Kara. We're not leaving here empty-handed." Understood. As Kara and the team fine-tuned the projectors, Aria's mind wandered back to the betrayal of Commander Thorne. He had abandoned them, chosen the path of surrender, of survival at any cost. But there was no honor in that. No future. Humanity had never been about surviving at all costs. It had always been about pushing back against the darkness, about fighting for a future worth living. Captain, Lyle said, pulling her from her thoughts. We've got incoming. Vorkin ships. Dozens of them. They've located us. The comm system crackled with the static of distant transmissions, the unmistakable signature of Vorkin technology cutting through the silence. Aria felt a chill run down her spine. They had been found. Battle stations, she ordered, her voice firm. Kara, how much longer until the weapons are operational? 5 minutes, Kara responded. We're almost there. We don't have 5 minutes, Aria said, her mind racing. We have to hold them off until we can fire. Everyone, get to the ship. We fight now or we don't fight at all. The team rushed to the transport ship, weapons in hand, as the first wave of Vorkin fighters entered the atmosphere. Aria's heart beat faster, but she held her ground. The oath had never been about avoiding death. It had always been about standing firm, even when the odds were stacked against them. Humanity's last stand had begun. The transport ship's engines roared to life as they ascended into the cold void of space, weapons ready, facing the Vorkin armada. Aria's hand clenched around the blood oath once more, feeling its pulse as if it were alive. Humanity had fought to the last breath, and this battle would be no different. They would show the Vorkin the strength of the human will, the strength of the oath. They would never bend. Not now, not ever. The transport ship tore through Europa's atmosphere, rising sharply into the vast, cold expanse of space. Aria's grip tightened on the armrest as the ship vibrated under the strain of the violent ascent. She didn't need to see the Vorkin ships yet to know they were closing in. The comms were alive with static and faint transmissions, their haunting signals betraying their presence. Aria's thoughts were laser-focused on the task at hand. This wasn't just a battle, it was the culmination of humanity's last stand, the fight to protect everything they had ever known. Captain, Kara's voice came through the comms, tight with urgency. The weapons are calibrated. They're ready to fire. Then let's make it count, Aria replied, her voice cold with resolve. Get us in range, Lyle, and everyone, prepare for the worst. We're going to need every ounce of strength we've got to get through this. The Vorkin ships came into view, their sleek, menacing forms cutting through the darkness like shadows. They were massive, far larger than anything humanity had ever built, but the sight only steeled Aria's resolve. The odds were overwhelming, but there was no turning back. There was no room for doubt. Lyle, his knuckles white on the controls, gritted his teeth as the transport ship swerved through space, evading incoming fire. We're getting close, Captain, but we've got a Vorkin destroyer on our tail. The ship rocked as blaster fire from the Vorkin destroyer slammed into the hull. Aria's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. Hold steady, she ordered. We've trained for this. Now, let's make them regret ever crossing us. Kara, her face set in grim determination, manned the weapon system. She toggled switches and activated the energy projectors with practiced precision. Locked on target, she said, her voice steady. Ready to fire on your command. Aria's eyes scanned the battlefield. The Vorkin ships were closing in, their massive guns charging up for another strike. The enemy had numbers, technology, and brute force on their side, but they lacked one thing, the will to fight for something greater than themselves. Fire, Aria commanded, her voice carrying the weight of generations. The weapons roared to life, releasing a blistering wave of energy that lit up the darkness like a starburst. The first Vorkin ship disintegrated in a flash of fiery destruction, its massive frame ripped apart by the sheer force of the energy blast. Another followed, then another, as the crew of Aria's transport ship unleashed everything they had. But the Vorkan fleet was relentless. Despite the power of humanity's weaponry, the enemy's numbers were vast, and their counterattack was savage. Blaster fire continued to rain down, striking the ship's hull and rattling everyone aboard. "Shields are holding, but not for long," Lyle shouted, sweat beading on his brow as he twisted the ship through a field of debris. Aria clenched her jaw. There was no room for failure, no time for hesitation. They had come too far to give up now. Humanity's future depended on this moment. "Focus fire on the destroyer," Aria barked. "We take it down, we stand a chance. Kara, make every shot count." The weapons flared again, and the transport ship swerved violently as the crew poured everything they had into the massive Vorkan vessel. The destroyer's shields flickered as the energy projectiles hit their mark, but it wasn't enough. The ship's relentless barrage forced them to retreat slightly, giving the enemy a temporary reprieve. "Damn it," Kara muttered under her breath, adjusting the targeting system. "We've only got a few more shots." "Keep going," Aria urged, her gaze locked on the battlefield. "We're not losing this fight." But as the final blast left the weapon's core, a new threat emerged. Another wave of Vorkan warships dropped from hyperspace, their numbers overwhelming. Aria's heart sank as the dark mass of enemy vessels filled the sky like an endless swarm. "We're surrounded," Lyle said, his voice laced with fear. The energy reserves on their weapons were nearly depleted. The ship was badly damaged. The crew was running on fumes. But Aria refused to surrender. She wouldn't. "We're not alone," she whispered to herself, clutching the blood oath, feeling its pulse once more. Humanity had always been its own salvation, and they would stand firm, no matter how dark the path ahead. "Prepare for a final charge," Aria said, her voice steeled with the fury of 1,000 generations. "We're going out fighting." The battle raged on, the ship shaking violently as more Vorkan warships closed in from every angle. Their immense firepower pounded against Aria's transport vessel, but the crew refused to yield. The energy projectors had done their damage, but the Vorkan fleet was relentless, their numbers far greater than anything humanity had ever faced. Still, Aria knew one thing for sure: they could not afford to back down. The blood oath was not just a promise, it was a lifeline, a reminder of who they were and what they were fighting for. Lyle's hands were moving in a blur, dodging enemy fire and desperately trying to keep the ship intact. "We can't keep this up much longer, Captain," he shouted over the roar of the engines. "We've taken too much damage. Shields are down to 20%. Aria's heart raced, but she remained calm. There was no panic in her, only a quiet, unyielding resolve. "We're not retreating. We fight to the end," she said, her voice firm. "We will make this count." Kara charged the projectors one last time. "We're going after the Vorkan command ship." Kara's face was pale, sweat streaming down her brow, but she didn't hesitate. "Charging," she said through gritted teeth. "It'll take a minute. We're close. Just hold on." Time seemed to stretch on forever as the Vorkan fleet closed in, their ships like massive predators circling their prey. Aria's crew was battered, exhausted, but they had never been closer to victory or to their final moments. The thought of losing was unbearable, but the thought of surrender, of allowing humanity to be reduced to nothing, was even worse. They had already lost so much. They couldn't lose this too. "Captain," Kara called out, her voice strained but resolute. "The projectors are ready. On your mark." Aria's eyes locked onto the massive Vorkan command ship ahead, its dark silhouette cutting through the space like a looming nightmare. This was the heart of their enemy's strength. If they could bring it down, they could disrupt the entire fleet and give humanity a fighting chance. "Fire," Aria commanded, her voice filled with the weight of the oath, of every life lost, and every promise made. The ship's weapons fired, the energy projectors sending out beams of searing light that streaked through the dark void of space. The Vorkan command ship took the brunt of the attack, its massive shields flickering under the barrage. But the Vorkan were cunning, and their ships fought back with brutal force, retaliating with volleys of energy blasts that struck Aria's ship with explosive force. But the attack had not been in vain. The Vorkan command ship shields were weakening, and Aria could see the chaos unfolding in their ranks. The Vorkan fleet was losing its cohesion, their once unified formation faltering as they scrambled to defend their leader. Again, Aria shouted, "We do it one more time. Hit them with everything we have." As Kara recalibrated the projectors for the final shot, Lyle maneuvered the ship into position, dodging more fire as the Vorkan fleet closed in. Aria's heart raced, but she kept her focus. They had one last chance. There could be no second chances. "Ready, Captain," Kara said, her voice filled with raw determination. "Fire," Aria ordered, her voice a battle cry. The energy projectors unleashed their final devastating blast. This time, the beam hit the Vorkan command ship dead center. The ship's shields buckled under the assault, and then, with a massive explosion, the command ship erupted in a burst of fire and debris. The shockwave rocked the battlefield, sending the Vorkan fleet into disarray. For the first time since the war had begun, the enemy was on the back foot. Lyle's voice cut through the chaos. "It's working. The fleet is falling apart." Aria allowed herself a brief moment of triumph. The command ship was gone, and the Vorkan fleet was in disarray. Humanity had struck a blow they had long thought impossible. But the battle wasn't over yet. "We finished this," Aria said, her voice fierce with finality. "We don't stop until the last Vorkan ship is in the ground." The crew gave a unified cheer, their spirits lifted despite the damage to their own vessel. The oath had been fulfilled. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Aria could see the path to victory. They had proven something. Humanity was not just a fleeting moment in the universe. It was a force that could rise from the ashes and strike with unparalleled resolve. And no matter the cost, they would continue to fight. The blood oath had bound them together, and nothing, not even the vast might of the Vorkan, could break their unity now. The battle for humanity's future had just begun.